Welcome to Mark's Money Trail, a presentation of the Independence Caucus. This is Money Trail number 1, Bailing Out on Reality, the top 796,087 reasons that Mark Kirk voted for the bank bailouts. Take a look at these two newspapers published one day apart and ask yourself, what's wrong with this picture? First, from the October 16th USA Today, we find out a bad economy and inflation are starting to drag down wages for workers. Average weekly wages have fallen 1.4%, which is the biggest annual decline since 1991. And then compare that to the very next day's New York Times, which says even as the economy continues to struggle, much of Wall Street is minting money and looking forward again to hefty bonuses. Really? And furthermore, titans like Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan are making fortunes in hot areas like trading stocks and bonds, rather than the ho-hum business of lending people money. Now wait a minute. Lending money was exactly why they said we had to bail out the banks. Goes on to say many Americans wonder how this can possibly be. How can banks prosper so soon after collapse, even as people are worrying about losing their jobs and their homes? Yeah, how can that be? And then it points out it may come as a surprise that one of the most powerful forces driving Wall Street is not the banks, but Washington. And who could have seen that coming, right? And Gary Richardson points out all of this is facilitated by the Federal Reserve and the government. We've shown the banks they can have the most frightening things happen to them, and we'll throw trillions of dollars to protect them. I have big concerns about that, Gary said. Oh, you think? So let's recap. While the Wall Street bankers are having a field day with taxpayer money at our expense, the rest of us are experiencing the largest decline in wages in 19 years? What's wrong with that picture? Well, if that picture isn't sitting too well with you, here's something else wrong with it. One of our own Illinois reps, Mark Kirk, voted to hand those tax dollars over to the banks. And now he wants you to elect him to be your senator because, get this, he wants to stop runaway spending in Congress? Well, as Matt Damon would say, how do you like them apples, Illinois? Unfortunately, there's another worm in the apple, and that's the relationship between the banks that are benefiting from TARP at our expense and the campaign donations those banks have made and continue to make to Mark Kirk. Remember how we were told we needed to pass the bank bailouts absolutely immediately or our entire banking system would collapse? Well, there were more than 8,500 banks in the country, so isn't it odd that 15 months later only 741 have taken any TARP money at all, and almost 7,800 of our nation's banks didn't need a single penny of bailout funds? And odder yet, if we're facing a nationwide crisis, how can it be that only 30 companies ended up with almost 95% of all the TARP money? That's right, just 30 companies, 2 government-sponsored entities, Fannie and Freddie, plus 2 car companies, plus 26 financial institutions that the New York Times just reported were having a field day at our expense. They've sucked up 94.9% of all the bailout money. See, the TARP bailouts weren't a national crisis. They're just an institutionalized gift to, well, let's just call them the Bailout 30. And the Bailout 30 just happened to systematically fund the perpetual re-election campaigns of friendly representatives like Mark Kirk, who handed over the keys to the Treasury. And when we say systematic, we mean systematic. Because while you and I as individuals can only have one opportunity to donate money, the Bailout 30 have 10 layers of donations they can use to steer money to their friendly representatives like Mark Kirk in exchange for bailout money. And the only thing all these layers have in common is the source of the money ultimately originates from the Bailout 30. Watch how this works. Layer 1. The 30 institutions and their subsidiaries set up political action committees, and those political action committees make donations directly to the candidate. So even though Mark Kirk doesn't want you to see his FEC campaign filings, if you did, you'd see JP Morgan Chase gave Kirk $4,000 just a few weeks before he voted for the bailouts. And you'd see that Citigroup gave Kirk $4,000 3 days after he voted for the bailouts. 3 days. Then you get to layer 2, because those PACs get money from individuals, those executives and employees of the banks, and they also make contributions to the candidate. Like Richard Litvak from Bank of America, he gave Kirk $2,000 just 12 days prior to his vote on the bailouts. And then Douglas Korn of Bear Stearns donated $1,000 to Kirk 4 days before he voted for the bailouts. And then he gave another $1,000 6 days after he voted for them. 2 donations 10 days apart. I'm sure that's a coincidence. Of course, then you got layer 3. The bailout companies hire lobbying firms. The lobbying firms have their own PACs too. Companies like DLA Piper, which is lobbying for Morgan Stanley, they added $5,750 to Kirk's campaign while they were representing Morgan Stanley. And then Layer 4, the lobbying firms have their own individual lobbyists working for them. They make contributions. And so when you find out that Marilyn Yeager was a lobbyist working for Olson and Byrd, which was representing Morgan Stanley, you can suddenly understand why she would donate $1,000 to an Illinois rep like Mark Kirk, even though she lives in Virginia. And next, the Bailout 30 and their subsidiaries, they form these associations like the American Bankers Association or the Financial Services Roundtable. These professional associations form their own PACs and they give money to the incumbents. Of course, the money is coming from the banks who set them up. Like the Financial Services Roundtable, they gave Kirk $2,500 5 days before the TARP vote, and then the American Bankers Association chipped in $5,000 more 3 weeks after he voted for the bailouts. Once again, coincidental timing, I'm sure. Of course, then we get to layer 6, and that's where the professional associations have their own employees who give money. And then stop me if this sounds familiar, but layer 7, those associations hire their lobbying firms who give money to the candidates. And of course, those lobbying firms are made up of individual lobbyists who give money to the candidates. Isn't this fun? Well, then we get to layer 9, which is really fun. Because incumbents have things called leadership PACs. Like Mark Kirk's, his is called the New American Leadership PAC. Everybody in those previous 8 layers of donations, they can now give money to the leadership PAC, and it doesn't count as a contribution to the candidate. It's FEC campaign laws are so much fun in games. Well, and we won't even talk about layer 10. That's where after they give all this money this way, then they give money to the parties give it to the candidates. You get the picture. Here's the bottom line about the money trail between the Bailout 30 and Mark Kirk's campaign coffers. In the 9 years prior to the TARP bailout vote, the Bailout 30 were donating just under $5,500 per month to Mark Kirk. But you better be sitting down because get this. In the past year, as a reward for voting for TARP, the Bailout 30 upped their donations to Kirk to just under $18,000 per month every month this past year. And when that all adds up to a grand total of $796,087 in donations from the Bailout 30 over the past 10 years, there's his top reasons why he voted for the bailout. He's demonstrated once and for all, if he has to choose between the banks that are giving him $800,000 and you, his Illinois constituents, you're going to end up in second place every time. And don't even get me started on cap and trade. So Illinois, how do you like them apples? Well, there's one more problem with this whole Mark Kirk picture. Because after the Republican governors won in Virginia and New Jersey and Scott Brown won in Massachusetts, the Illinois Republican Party thinks we the people are upset with Democrats. They think you are going to accept Mark Kirk as your senator. Are you kidding me? Look, we the people aren't upset at just Democrats. We've had it with compromise incumbents from both parties. And our message to the Illinois Republican Party that we're going to deliver this Tuesday is simply this. We the people are done settling for typical party establishment candidates like Mark Kirk that you keep trotting out for us. Because you know what? We've got a better idea. See, the Independence Caucus, along with other Patriotic, 912, and Tea Party groups, are going to get behind and elect a true fiscally responsible candidate, one who's rock solid on fiscal responsibility and constitutional authority. His name is Judge Don Lowry, and he's served America his entire life. He was drafted as a private and sent to Vietnam. He came out 3 years later as a captain, decorated with a Bronze Star, an Air Medal, and an Army Commendation Medal. He was tried and tested for 26 years on the bench, where he repeatedly made decisions based on what's right and in line with the rule of law, not what was politically expedient or popular. He taught constitutional law. He understands the Constitution is mainly designed to limit federal government powers, and that most of constitutional powers have been granted and should remain with the states. See, that's the kind of man we need in the Senate, not Mark Kirk. We call on all Illinois patriots to unite behind Judge Lowry's candidacy and help him win the primary this Tuesday. Remember, this is truly a grassroots effort, so here's what you can do. If you don't do this, Mark Kirk is going to get in. Make sure you send this link to this video to every person you know who lives in Illinois. And then get ready, get on the internet, post this link on every video, every blog, every message board, every comments on online news reports, wherever the opportunity arises. You've got to let people know what Mark Kirk is all about. And third, remember, for every active citizen like yourself, there's dozens of citizens who aren't active, and they won't see this video unless you make it a point to reach out to them and make sure they see this. If enough of us do this weekend, by Tuesday morning, we'll collectively open the eyes of tens of thousands of Illinois voters who otherwise wouldn't see this information, otherwise wouldn't know anything at all about Judge Lowry. And then after Judge Lowry is elected on Tuesday, you can find out more about the Independence Caucus at www.icaucus.ning.com. Sincerely, the Combined Illinois Steering Committee of the Independence Caucus, We'll see you there.